Good morning and welcome to today's Lockdown Learning Free Business Continuity webinar. Today's webinar is called Governed Unit of Crisis Management and will be presented by Dr. Sadeq AlAbdulwahab, CEO of Management Doctor Consultancy Center, an international crisis management consultant based in Bahrain. We have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. To submit your questions, all you need to do is type in the question box on the control panel to the right of your screen, and these will be put through to Sadeq at the end. You'll receive a recording of the webinar later on today in case you missed any of the content covered. So I think we're all ready to begin, so I shall hand you over to Sadeq. Right, Sadeq, right, I'll leave you to it. Thank you.
Greetings to audience. I am happy today to be with you in the Lockdown Learning by BC Trainings to talk about Governed Unit of Crisis Management. Before we talk about the crisis units, I want to just some examples of sustained companies. We have Kellogg's, established in 1906 by Will Kellogg's by famous story to produce the cornflakes. Thomas Edison in 1898 established General Electric to produce the electrical equipment. John Bosch and Henry Lamb established their own company in 1853 that produced health eye protections equipment. You can see those companies established before 100 years ago, and they still running and alive. And maybe you are wonders how does company withstand in all this long time, even they faces so many crises, 2 world war, so many epidemics, a lot of the natural disasters. You can wonder about those companies, but there is a secret behind the sustaining life for that company. The secret is there is 2 types of life cycles for their organizations. There is a traditional life cycles, which is for the most organization and company in this world. This life cycle is typical and famous, starting by establishment by entrepreneurships. Then there is a growth by transformation of the new product and services until they reach to their stabilities. But the life have a crisis. When this companies face a crisis, disturbance will happen, and there is a strategy for the containment. The minute the strategy of containment, there is an endorsement period. It's maybe middle, maybe short, depending on that strategy. But finally, there is a turn off of that company because they close because nobody need their product or service anymore, or there's bankruptcy. But for the sustained company, no, they have transformational life cycles of the organization. It is a start with the strategic transformations. They format strategy, then they shift to the another stage. It is the optimization. Optimize their revenue, productions, their service and product qualities, optimize the human development. And those companies know that life is not only stable times, there is a crisis time, and they are prepared for that one, for that crisis. When they reach for the crisis, they have their own preparations and strategy for the contentment. Then they shift again to do the re-strategy, reformations, and redesign. Previously, I have the webinars. I explain in details how the company can redesign their strategy after the crisis by using balance scorecard. You can refer to that webinars. It is in my LinkedIn page and also in the YouTube. Today, I want to talk about the driver that make the transformational life cycles run all the times in the three stages, during the stabilities and during the crisis. What is this driver? The driver is the integrated governance. Maybe you read a lot of books and articles, and you have good knowledge about corporate governance, and there is a lot of methods and approaches. But here's for the effective crisis management, I talk specifically about integrated governance. What is integrated governance? The integrated governance believe there is 8 principles will be achieved by the governance structures. These structures include 5 units. Each unit will manage 2 of those principles. Strategizing unit will manage the representatives of all stockholders in the company and will plan the objectivities of the strategy by using balance scorecard. Monitoring unit will audit the compliance of the standards and law and will regulate the transparency in the company. Judging unit will perform accountabilities and ensure the fairness in the workplace. Mentoring unit work to develop the sustainability and ethical leaderships. Before the crisis management and risk management was part of the mentoring unit. But because the complexities of the crisis, I believe the integrated governance should have the 5th unit, it is crisis unit, to work permanently to prepare for the crisis. But this crisis unit should be not independent, but integrated with the other 4 units, because all these 4 units will work together, will support each other. What is the crisis unit and what are the rules of the crisis unit? The crisis unit should have and perform containment strategy. And for the containment and overcome crisis, you should have 4 other rules. Each rules actually it is preparations for the crisis. You have succession planning. It is long-term preparations for the crisis. Business continuity planning. It is mid-term preparations for crisis. Disaster recovery methods is short-term preparations for crisis. Today, we will focus about explaining each rule of that 4th rule of the crisis management. And we will start by the containment strategy. When the crisis happens, everybody will say we need immediate containment. But immediate containment is not spontaneously and not easy job. We need a strategy. And there is 2 types of the strategy. we have a pre-containment strategy, which is the crisis leadership development. And we have post-containment strategy, which is the re-strategy thinking. Crisis leadership. There is a lot of models for crisis leadership, but I prefer the models that empirically studied by Dr. Thomas Christens in Cambridge University. He studied real case studies for the crisis leadership practice, and he found the crisis leaders should have 5 personal traits. They should be well-exampled, character, competent, courageous, decisive. And the crisis leaders should perform 3 behaviors. Should do the clear visioning to allow the people have vision how to exit from that crisis, even there is a physical wastages, and not allow to the physical wastages to disappoint the employees and stop working. The crisis leaders should have strategic communicating. All the informations that will come in or go out will be through the governance during the crisis. Why? To avoid any public scandals that usually most of the crises become worse because of the wrong information go to the media. The crisis leadership have managerial caring who put the right person in the right position, and he very care in the motivations and not allow to the emotional chaos, which is collaterally with coming with the any crisis. And usually when you want to manage a crisis, manage the emotional chaos first and make emotional stabilities. You will manage the 70% of the crisis consequences. This is related to the crisis leadership development, which is a pre-containment strategy. Post-containment strategy, it is re-strategy thinking. Again, I have the webinars. I talk in details how to design and redesign strategy and balance scorecard after the crisis. And this is part of it, and I explain it in details. Here, I will explain briefly how we think for re-strategy after the crisis. This is based on the methods of the balance scorecard. We have 4 perspectives. Financial perspectives. When you customer perspective, internal perspectives, intellectual capital perspectives. Usually for the planning have 3 types, is the corresponding to the transformational life cycle that I show you. And for each stage, there is type of planning. When you are in the optimizations, which is in the normal life, usually the company in the financial planning always think about rapid growth. But for the crisis, think about sustain a new idea, a new project, and a new people, and build the infrastructures that help you during the crisis to sustain that new things. In the customer perspectives, you will busy in the merchandising. You are busy to maximize to sell goods and service to the customer. But if you want to be safe from the crisis, think also about penetrations of the new market, in new sectors, and in new segmentations. Don't put all your eggs in one place. Spread them. Do not break them all during the crisis. Because the crisis, when coming, some sectors or market will go down, but there is another market or sectors will go up. So you will be unstable even in the crisis because you will be active in other sectors or market. For the internal process perspectives, of course, you are busy during the optimizations and optimize your productions and your product qualities and service qualities. But you should have method for re-engineering, and you have the scenario how you will re-engineer your work process during the crisis. And the normal time for the intellectual capital perspectives, you will think about the corporate citizenship. You want all your staff to stay in your company, but this is will not happen in the crisis because there is different scenario that you predict some and you don't predict a lot of them. So in the crisis, you should ensure you have very strong governance that you will manage your people during the crisis time. This is related to the containment strategy. We have the second rule in business continuity planning. Here briefly and show in simple way, I will explain that one. The process for the business continuity planning are 4 steps. First step, do risk assessment. Know the type of risk in your company. And the risk are 4 types. There is low risk, low severity, which is not cost anything if it is happen, and low occurrence, which is rarely happens in the company. Normal risk, which is also low severity but high occurrence because it's a lot of time is happens in your company. Exceptional risk, it is high severity but rarely happen, low occurrence. The high risk is very dangerous in your company, which is have high severity and high occurrence. The second step, you will do the business impact analysis to every activity and to every work unit in your company, and to classify that activities to the 5 tiers. First tier is the critical activities. These activities, when stop, your work will stop. Should be not stop and should be have immediate backup for that activities. Second tier is the core activities. Also, this core activities, when stop, your work will stop too. But you will have time for recovery and restorations. Third tier, supportive activities. The supportive activities, when it is stopped, your work will not stop, but will slow down. Fourth tier is the non-critical activities. When it is stopped, your work will not stop and will not slow down, but the activities in the above tier will be in more risk. Fifth tier is optional activity. This is usually is working within the normal time and maybe not work in the abnormal time. In the business impact analysis, you will do estimation and determination for the 4 parameters. RTO, recovery time objectives, to design your work systems based on that parameters, so it can be recovered within the based on the RTO. RBO, recovery point objectives, which is the time to update the data for your work process. MTBD, maximum tolerance period of disturbance. This is the threshold. When you exceed it, mean shift from one recovery methods to another recovery method. Actually, there is a gap between the actual work and the design work. And here I same what I show you in that table. There is a range. Don't exceed the range for the gap between the actual and design one of your work units. Third step is the strategy development. Now you have knowledge about the risk in your company. You have knowledge about the activities and how it is work in your workplace. Now we can develop a strategy, and the strategy is three parts: scenarios, strategic options, recovery methods. In the scenarios, we will classify the risk in the four type of threats: natural threats, human threats, technical threats. And we will explain what may happen if any threats occur in the company, how it will affect in the premises, people, information technology, suppliers, equipment. Then I will talk about the strategic options, how I can detect these threats, how can respond, which actions should be taken. And this strategic options also based on the theory of the risk management. We have four risks as I explained to you. For the low risk, the strategy of the response is tolerance of risk. Don't do any actions. Just have consequent monitors to see, is this low risk lead to another risk, more danger or not? Just that way. If it is lead, you will deal with another type of that risk. Normal risk, the strategy for response, mitigation of the risk. Design your work process to make the consequences for the normal risk as minimum as you can. And you should have detectives monitors. When this risk happen, you know it's happened. What you will do? Correctives action, repair the damage. Exceptional risk, the strategy for response for this one is the transfer the responsibilities of the risk action to the another special party. You will need insurable action. You will need to sign agreement with the special party who will come to your company in that special case to work to overcome that risk. What you need? You need predictive monitor. Why? You want pre-actions more than the post actions, so you can notify that the party who is responsible about the exhibition risk, the risk will coming soon. Please do your preparations. And high risk, the strategy for that one, the avoidance of the risk. Don't let that risk happen in your company. You should have continuous monitoring to ensure this risk will not happen in your company. You should spend a lot of money for the preventive actions against that risk. So this is the strategic options. The third stage in the strategy development is the recovery methods. There is four types of methods: data gathering, remote centers, peculiar act, human synergy. This is what I will explain it in the third rule of the crisis management unit. We have the four methods of disaster recovery I explained. We will start with the remote recovery centers. Each company should have these centers and include backup IT systems to not lose your data during the disturbance or crisis. Depend on your business, maybe you will go to furnish that center for the customer service. Maybe the customer not go for that original workplace and going to the alternative one. Also depend on your business, maybe you will go to occupy that center by second-hand productions line to ensure your production, even if it's become very, very slow, but there is continuous productions in your company. Maybe you will lose your IT or the disturbance time become more than MTBD. In this time, you will go to the collect informations and data manually by the human. But you should ensure there is a updating for that data after the restorations period. Some crises become worse, like what happened now by this coronavirus pandemics. In this case, we should have nuclear act. The leadership in this crisis will be by the crisis unit itself. The work in this time will be by using personal protective equipment. This act will be similar like military type act. No chance for mistake, and there is punishment for any violations for that act. Maybe the crisis will be more worse, to lose partially or fully of the power or fuel supply. In this case, you will go to replace a human instead of machine to work, and you need to use reserve workforce. For the managing reserve workforce, for that purpose, the crisis unit should have another rules is called succession planning that I will explain it in the next slide. Succession planning. There is two types of succession planning. First type is typical one, executive succession planning, which believe there is a positions and should be there is a successor for that positions. And the successor are three types. First type is qualified successor, which will be which it is professionally ready to hold this position as any time, which is pass all test and training for that position. The second category is a candidate. They will be ready for that positions within 5 years, and they should have a special training program to be qualified successor. Trainee who will be ready for the position after 10 years, and they should have skill development program to be candidates. This is this type of succession planning. It is good for the disturbance that happens for vacancies of the positions that is related to the death, retirement, or resignations of the expert people in your company. But for the crisis and emergency, there is another type of the succession planning. It's called emergent successions. You should have reserve workforce like retirees, outsourcers, volunteers, students, soldiers, civil defenders, who maybe work with you in your company during the crisis. And maybe those people not belong to your company, but you should ensure to provide the training to the who you believe he will work with you. Maybe you will have system for the certified people who can work and who cannot work with your company during the crisis. You should have the contract with the outsourcing suppliers who can provide you by the required people crisis, and in some national crisis, you need the agreement with the government to ensure and to determine the rules of soldiers and rule of civil defenders inside your company during special crisis and disasters. Now, let's summarize what we studied about our current crisis now, which is coronavirus pandemic. Now, most the world now in the lockdown, because that I provide this webinars and the lockdown learning. And we know there is a factories, schools, shops, customer service, workshops are closed. Actually, all these companies are business, and same time it is our life. When it is closed, our life will not run. What we should do? What we should do, we should believe by the crisis unit that I presented here, and each company is dependent their business should do some actions. Some company can run by only letting their staffs to wear special clothes and special PPE that not allow to infections by the coronavirus. Some company need to re-engineer the way of the remote works to make the work of the home more effective, or to have a very special rooms for some people to work inside the company, and there is the system for the social distance. Some companies need to do more re-engineering to know how to replace some activities by robots. Now there is some activities was very normal task before, but it is now highly risk, should be replaced by robots to not put the people inside the risk. Also, as I told you, in this crisis, there is some sectors become depressed, but there is another sectors becomes very active and profitable. The companies need to do some re-strategy and reinvestment to shift from the old depressed sectors to the new active sectors within this outbreak. I know manufacturer in French that he shift from produce bare foam, and he now producing sterilizers. Also, not just for the business, also for the people. Now we have so many companies closed, the people not work, but another companies have the shortage, so they should have the emergent succession planning, so we can shift the people who is from the closed company to the shortage company. So I am happy today to represent this webinars, so we can shift now to the questions, and I will happy to answer your questions. So we open the questions and answer sessions for the audience. You can type it in the chat and I will answer it.
Hi. If we got any questions coming in now, that'd be great. Otherwise, we shall. I think we'll wrap up. We just give a couple of seconds, and We'll see if we've got any questions coming in. But
here one questions: do you believe that our life will be written back normal with that governed unit of crisis management? What I believe, according to the news that we have, this crisis will be for the long time. Our life will not return to the normal. It's need a lot of the changing. But if every companies believe by that one, believe by these procedures, by these actions, actually we can return back to the new life that ensure business continuities, that ensure that people will work, that people will get their incomes, that ensures we will provide the needs, goods, services to the people by the different way. I believe this crisis management unit can ensure the business continuity and can ensure the economic not go to be worse, as a lot of the expert and analysts analyze that situations.
okay, great. We'll have one other question, and then if you could maybe answer that, and then that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So if there is any another questions, can I answer it before we terminate this webinar?
I'll tell you what, I think we're good. I think what we'll do is
Yes.
we'll say, no, that's been great. I think that was really good, really interesting. Thank you, Sadeq. And thank you for everyone that attended, listened in, and asked questions. As I mentioned earlier, you'll receive a recording of the webinar later on today, and this will be emailed to you via GoToWebinar. The next webinar is scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m. The webinar will be on decision making during a crisis, and we will be presented by Charlie McLean Bristol. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Sadeq, and I hope you have a great day.